What does the Denver Broncos injury report look like on Friday heading into Sunday's matchup against the New York Jets? Plus, you'll get a little bit of insight in the tail of the tape. You'll get all that action and much more in today's brand new episode of Good Morning Broncos. Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of GMB, your daily bite-sized Broncos conversation with a cup of coffee every single morning, every weekday, 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time here on Mile High Sports YouTube page. Do us a favor if you love Colorado sports. Mile High Sports is every team, every day. Subscribe to that channel down below so you never miss out on coverage on the Denver Broncos. What's going on with the CU Buffs? What's going on with the Denver Nuggets as the season is approaching its start? And the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado sports coverage continues here. Mile High Sports. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for MHS here. And look, Broncos country, let's waste no time. It is Friday, and the Broncos have one more practice coming up here today where they're going to put in their finishing touches. Tomorrow will be a walkthrough for them as they go through a little bit of the final touches they need to add. And then Sunday, it is kickoff at Empower Field at Mile High, 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time against the New York Jets. Now for a matchup that had so much hyperbole couple of months ago here after Sean Payton made his comments about Nathaniel Hackett. Both teams sit at a 1-3 record. And overall, the hype between these two teams, the hype for this matchup specifically, that so many people are saying, flex this into primetime. Well, the hype has kind of died down a little bit. Nobody anticipated Denver would be 1-3 at this point. I mean, ideally, when you look back on it, Denver should be 3-1 with their only loss coming to the Miami Dolphins. And the New York Jets, look, they faced some tough circumstances, losing Aaron Rodgers in week 1. They had that dramatic punt return touchdown by Xavier Gibson, their undrafted rookie free agent, in that game to go 1-0 on the season. But then from that point, they lost to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they played a wide variety of teams, the New England Patriots being another team that they've faced off against, Kansas City this past week as well. So for the Jets, you look at maybe where they're at. They're not where they wanted to be. They're not, at a juncture where it's like, all right, hey, they had all this hype surrounding them, and that's something that Sean Payton had talked about. But unfortunately, one injury kind of deflated that. But you've seen some of these mistakes here by the Jets. But let their record not dissuade you from thinking like this is a team that could come into Denver and beat them, because they certainly can. You look at what the Jets have from a personnel standpoint on offense and defense and so many other things. Like, they have a lot of things that they can do. And despite some of their rankings so far through 4 weeks of play heading into week 5, those numbers are a little bit deceptive. We'll dive into that on today's episode of the show here. Want to go through a Broncos injury report update for all of you here. Make sure you go to milehighsports.com for all the written content and coverage. You want to stay up to date what's going on outside of what you consume here on Good Morning Broncos or the Pick Action Roll podcast with Ryan Blackburn covering the Denver Nuggets. milehighsports.com is the place to be for all your up-to-date information, including reports from practice, exclusive interviews, so on and so forth. And you can check out the latest there that I did from yesterday's practice in Dove Valley, talking about Nick Bonito and how excited he is to run with this opportunity now that he has as a starter. You hear some quotes from him in that. But let's go through and let's talk about maybe the practice report here for the Broncos on Thursday. We'll see where things are at here on Friday for Denver ultimately. But we talked about it yesterday after the news of Randy Gregory being released here by the team. Denver is in a position right now where they're getting some guys back from injury. Some guys may not be back exactly this week, but the process of those guys returning is in play right now. And so let's go through. For 2 consecutive days, the Broncos had several of their key players back on the field, whether that was in a full or limited capacity here. Free safety, Justin Simmons. Outside linebackers, Frank Clark and Baron Browning. Inside linebacker, Josey Jewell. Safety, P.J. Locke. And defensive tackle, Mike Purcell. Guys who've been on the injured list. They were back at practice, or they practiced for 2 consecutive days in a row here at the Centura Health Training Center. Now, one player we talked about yesterday that was on the side field that did not participate in practice, that is running back Javonte Williams. Now, he was back on the practice field on Thursday. So without getting too deep into the weeds here real quick, Broncos country, I want to give you a little bit of insight as to what we saw yesterday in Dove Valley, how the tail of the tape sets up, and then we'll dive into that. Here is yesterday's practice report in Dove Valley. The Denver Broncos were back on the practice field on Thursday at the Centura Health Training Center, and some good news as we saw Javonte Williams move from the side field on Wednesday back to the practice field on Thursday. We'll see what his status is going into Sunday's game against the New York Jets here, but obviously a new sense right now here this week for the Broncos, a sense of urgency here with the New York Jets coming to town. Denver coming off their first victory of the season this past week against the Chicago Bears. Russell Wilson, the Broncos offense, they're going to have to capitalize against a very aggressive New York Jets defense that, while you look at the statistics for the Jets defense, they're bottom ranked in several categories. It's a little deceptive as they're the #1 red zone defense in the NFL with elite level players at the D-line, linebacker, and defensive back positions. Denver's going to have to find a way to get the run game going, and we're going to see Russell Wilson, who's already in the top 10 right now in passing in the league, to air it out to guys like Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy here. Now for the Broncos defense, stopping Zach Wilson and that Jets offense that has struggled themselves, averaging over 15.5 points per game on the offensive side. They looked a little bit better against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Zach Wilson got into a rhythm, but Breece Hall is no longer on a pitch count at the running back spot. They have Dalvin Cook, Michael Carter, 3 running backs that are very serviceable. When the Broncos last week, they gave up 171 yards on the ground. They gave up 350 the week before to the Miami Dolphins in the rushing department alone. Denver's defense has to find a way to get stops on third down, get off the field, and eliminate the explosive plays. Those are the keys to victory here this week. The Broncos debuting their new snow-capped looks that you're going to see on Sunday. The white helmet's going to be a nice appeal there. Kickoff set for 2:25 p.m. Mountain Time. Empower Field at Mile High. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter, Mile High Sports. So now you saw it, obviously the white snow-capped helmets. That's something that the Broncos are going to be showing off here this week with the orange color rush jerseys. Though I do have to say, if you're watching that report that I just put together there, the white helmet, the white jerseys, oh man, that looks nice. Unfortunately, Denver, because they already have the color rush uniforms, they also have the all blues. They can't have an additional alternate on top of that to go with the helmet. So if Denver were to hypothetically get rid of the all blues from their lineup rotation, if they would have done that in the offseason, Denver could have maybe wore a white on white this season. But unfortunately, maybe that's something we'll see going into next year in 2024 here. But kind of going back to the injury report, the official status is here for Denver. Limited participants: Justin Simmons, Frank Clark, Javonte Williams, Mike Purcell, Baron Browning, and Lloyd Cushenberry. Aside from that, there are 2 players who were on the injury list that upgraded from limited to full. Josey Jewell, coming back from a groin injury, was a full participant, which I think that highlights and projects very well that he's going to be ready to return here on Sunday against the Jets. Jerry Jeudy, who's been on the injury report for the last few weeks, dating back to the Miami week with a knee injury, he was upgraded from limited to full. And even though he's been on the injury report the past few weeks, he has played. So not a lot to be concerned about here for the Broncos, but we'll be very curious to see how today's practice formulates in Dove Valley. Do any of these players who've been limited, do they upgrade to full? And if they do, you can anticipate they'll play. If they're limited once again, then more than likely they'll be questionable game time decision on Sunday. And if there's any of these players that somehow jumps off from a limited to a DNP, then obviously that might mean that they might be out of Sunday's matchup against the Jets. We'll keep you posted on that. And also, we forgot to touch on another limited participant, center Lloyd Cushenberry. The last couple of days listed with a quad injury. He was limited at practice here. And I think mainly he got teamwork drills versus individual. I'll have to double check on that. But I don't think he's going to miss any time. But if he does, and you have to keep an eye on Alex Forsythe, you have to keep an eye on Luke Wattenberg, potentially if something is up with Lloyd Cushenberry, who has had, in my opinion, an impressive season so far. The Broncos offensive line has had moments where they've been questionable in some areas. They've made some bad plays at some points, but they've been a much more upgraded unit. And so far through the first 4 weeks of the season, they've been a healthy unit, which is a good sign overall here for Denver. So with that said, let's jump into our tale of the tape here on today's morning installment of Good Morning Broncos. Now we're going to look at major statistical categories, a compare and contrast of Denver's offense against the Jets defense, Denver's defense against the Jets offense, so on and so forth, and who you have to watch out for here. Overall, let's take a look at the Broncos offense here. Net yards per game, the Broncos are averaging 333.3 yards per game, which is good for 14th right now in the National Football League, with 237.8 of those coming through the air. The Broncos have the 10th ranked passing offense right now in the league in terms of yards, and then they're 20th in the NFL right now in terms of yards per game on the ground rushing, and that's 95.5. That's an area where it's kind of skewed because Denver's had to get away from the run a little bit in games where they have trailed. And so if Denver's not trailing, they actually might have a chance to establish the run. We talked about Javonte being back at practice. If he's able to go on Sunday, that's great. If not, Samaje Perine more than likely will get the start, and you'll see a combination between he, Jaleel McLaughlin. And also keep in mind, Dwayne Washington was elevated from the practice squad to the active roster this week. So they have another running back, available if they do need him in that. Not to mention he's a key special teams player here for Sean Payton. He's considered a core 4 specialist. Denver has the 6th ranked offense in terms of net yards per play, 5.87 yards per play here so far this season. Really good efficiency, though, for Denver. 25 points per game, which right now is tied for 10th in the league, where Denver is probably bottom ranked or in the bottom 10. They've allowed 11 sacks so far here through the first 4 weeks. And realistically, a big portion of those came against the Washington Commanders in week 2. So if you cancel that out, maybe Denver's actually in the top 10. If you don't have that Commanders game in there where he was sacked 7 out of the 11 times he's been sacked so far this season here. Denver's offense on third down, they're ranked 14th, converting 39.1% of their third down attempts. They're one area we've seen an issue for Denver, specifically on offense this year, especially on third down, has been pre-snap penalties. We're talking false starts. We're talking, even a holding call from time to time. That has to go away. Denver's been penalized 33 times this season, 17 of them on the defense, 13 on offense, and then 3 penalties on the special team side of the ball. They're going to have to clean that up. But Denver making strides there. And I think it's really about not finding yourself in a 3rd and long situation, because it's hard to dial up certain play calls. And Denver's had a couple. I think they've had a 3rd and 30. They've had a 3rd and 24 this season. So, yeah, you got to not find yourself in those situations, because there's not a lot of play calls that you can run that's going to get you the amount of yardage that you need without the defense knowing exactly what you're going to be doing there. So something to keep an eye on. Red zone, though, for Denver this year. I mean, obviously third down, they were dead last season. Red zone, they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. They're in a good spot here, kind of middle of the pack. They're 15th in the NFL right now in terms of red zone conversion percentage. When they get down there, they're converting 57.1% of their red zone attempts, which now makes it very interesting, because that's where we talk about the New York Jets defense, the challenge that they possess. We talk about Denver in the red zone on offense. Well, the New York Jets, they have the number 1 ranked red zone defense right now in the league, allowing opponents to score on only 25% of their red zone attempts so far through the first 4 weeks. And that's even factoring in the Kansas City Chiefs game this past Sunday on Sunday Night Football. And look, that defense, you look at the statistical rankings that I'm about to read, and you're like, okay, well, this isn't a very good defense. It's different when you watch them, right? I think the numbers lie a little bit. This is a true bend but don't break style of defense, but they got guys that can turn it on very instantly. We already know about Sauce Gardner. Whitehead at the safety position leads the team for them with 3 interceptions. They have Quincy Williams, CJ Mosley, a linebacker, I believe DJ Reed. And then you also have other guys too, Quinton Williams, Quentin Jefferson. Like, they have some dogs on the defense line. Jermaine Johnson at outside linebacker. This is a tough defense on paper, even though that they are the 23rd ranked defense in terms of net yards per game allowed, where they're allowing 363 yards per game. They're allowing over 5.09 yards per play, which is good for 15th in the NFL. They're allowing 21 points per game, which gives them a 14th ranked ranking here so far this season. And then on top of that, they are allowing 148 rushing yards on the ground, which gives them a ranking of 28th right now. And Denver, this might be the perfect circumstance, the perfect storm here, if they're not trailing, to get the run game going. If Javonte's healthy, pound the rock inside, change it up with Jaleel McLaughlin with his explosiveness and great vision that he's demonstrated. Samaje is a change of pace guy. Denver, in my opinion, can do so much more on the offensive side of the ball if they can get the run game going, right? Russell Wilson, the passing game has been pretty damn good this season, but you got to be able to run the football. You can't be one-dimensional, because then teams can try to game plan to take that away. But unfortunately, Denver's defense giving up all the points that they have, Denver has had to abandon the run game. So that also factors into what we're talking about here. So something to keep an eye on here overall. They have 5 interceptions on the season so far, the Jets defense, which is good for 4th in the NFL. They have 6 total takeaways, good for 8th in the NFL. They only have 7 sacks on the year, though, which is 26. Denver has 8 sacks on the year, which puts them at 25th. And then you look at third down percentage. They're allowing teams to convert on 46.8% of their third down attempts. Now, granted, a lot of these are 3rd and short. You factor in penalties, this definitely skews it a little bit. And then we talked about the number 1 red zone defense in the NFL. That's an area where Denver's going to have to be very efficient if they do find themselves in a position to get inside the red zone. But how does this work now when we flip it? You go the inverse here. You look at Denver's defense against the Jets offense. Well, Denver's defense right now, bottom ranked in almost every major statistical category that you can think of. And they're bottom 10 in almost every category you could think of, minus interceptions and fumble recoveries here so far this season. So let's go down the list here. Yards per game allowed here by the Broncos defense, 461.5, which is good for 32nd right now. Dead last in the NFL, dead last in yards per play at 7.05 yards per play allowed. And that's where the balance has to come with eliminating the explosives and what you do on first down and second down. Denver's had situations where they've had a 2nd and 15, or they had a 3rd and 10 last week against Justin Fields. He broke contain and got inside and ran for a big time gain to, give them a first down on what could have been a game-winning drive for them. You can't have those types of breakdowns there. Those big plays have hurt Denver. They're dead last right now in the NFL in total points per game allowed. They're allowing 37.5 points right now. When you look at the New York Jets, offensively, they're averaging 15.5 points per game, which is a little deceptive. I mean, they've had some struggles. They've also played some pretty tough defenses as well here. They haven't really been able to get some things going, but Zach Wilson found confidence last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'd say that offense in general did. And look, Breece Hall, who had a 62-yard rushing touchdown against Denver when healthy last year, he was a big catalyst before tearing his ACL in that game. The Broncos have to find a way to slow him down. He's no longer on a pitch count coming off the ACL injury. It's going to be him, Michael Carter, and Dalvin Cook. It's going to be a 3-headed attack there in the rushing department. And then obviously you got to factor in guys like Allen Lazard and Garrett Wilson in the receiving game. Tight ends have hurt Denver the last couple of weeks here. So you're taking a look, okay, who do they have? They have CJ Uzama. They have Tyler Conklin, who can get involved. Cole Kmet's coming off of a 2-touchdown performance against the Broncos. So you know that the Jets offense, they're going to look to try to scheme some things up to get some of those matchups in the middle of the field. That's where having a guy like Justin Simmons back is super important, in my opinion here. And overall, Denver 25th in terms of takeaways. They only have 3 takeaways so far on the season. They're 24th in third down percentage, allowing teams to convert on third down at a rate of 45.2%. And they're right now the 31st ranked red zone defense in the NFL, allowing teams to score on 81.3% of their attempts. That right there is not very efficient. You look at the Jets. We talked about it, 30th ranked in terms of total net yards, 252.8. They've had their struggles. Yards per play, 4.6. Points per game, 15.5. Once again, 15.5. That was kind of the average, 15 to 16 under Nathaniel Hackett when he was with the Denver Broncos. And they're kind of bottom ranked a little bit in terms of net passing yards per game, 157.3 through the air. They've also been sacked a total of 11 times like the Broncos have. And on third down, they're dead last, converting only 26.5% of their offensive attempts. Denver's going to have to find a way to get off the field. That's going to be the major key for them so far this week, making sure you don't break contain so Zach Wilson can get outside. He's their 3rd leading rusher, folks. I don't know if you knew this, but he's got 57 yards rushing so far this season, despite the times he's been sacked so far this year. He's a guy who squirrely ran over the Broncos defense last season when they played at Empower Field at Mile High. So these are all the news and notes you need to know about the tail of the tape. One guy I think you got to highlight in terms of special teams for the Jets that you absolutely have to avoid, and the Jets are thinking the same exact thing in the return game. For the Broncos, you have Marvin Mims, who's had some explosive returns, averaging 35.2 kickoff return yards per game. And then obviously he's averaging 35 yards per punt return as well. But Xavier Gipson, the undrafted rookie free agent over there in New York, he's got 5 attempts on the year. He's averaging 24.6 yards per kickoff return, 15.4 yards per punt return on 8 attempts. So 2 very explosive guys back there on each team that can maybe make a difference in the special team side of the game here. We'll see where the Broncos come into this matchup here. They're going to have to obviously take care of the football. They're going to have to convert on long drives. They're going to have to find a way to come in with points, and they're going to have to get stops on defense. I mean, it's as cliche as it sounds. That's what they have to do. They haven't done that in 3 weeks, or actually we can almost say kind of 4 weeks at this point. They have to find a way to do just that. But Broncos country, thank you so much for rocking with us here on this morning's brand new episode of Good Morning Broncos. But Broncos country, don't forget to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube page. You love Colorado sports, Denver Broncos, Denver Nuggets, Colorado Rockies, Colorado Avalanche, the CU Buffs. We got all that action here at Mile High Sports, every team, every day. I'm Cody Roark. Broncos country, we'll see you on Monday for a post-game Good Morning Broncos edition. Is going to be a Victory Monday, or is it going to be, once again, put a little bit of something extra in your coffee Monday show? We'll dive deeper into that on Monday. We'll see you then, Broncos country.